Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host. In our last show, I was talking about Ron DeSantis, and I was saying that if he didn't come in second in New Hampshire, he would likely suspend his campaign. He, in fact, did that about 5 minutes after I stopped recording last week. So DeSantis is out. You probably know that. Nikki Haley is actually starting to campaign. I'm not saying she's doing the greatest job, but she's doing a pretty good job. I think if she would have started campaigning the way she did just this week, there would be a real race going on between her and Trump. But she didn't start until this week. I think it's going to be too late. In reality, I think it's now going to help the Democrats because you have a Republican saying these things that she's saying about Trump, talking about his cognitive decline, and talking about him being a petulant child. Everyone's still saying that Trump is going to be the nominee. I still feel like he's not. And I am hearing more people starting to say, I don't think this is over. Of course, just a couple days ago, Donald Trump was penalized $83.3 million in the E. Jean Carroll case. He could be convicted before Election Day. Not sure if that's going to happen in the time crunch. A lot of details that I'd like to go through that I find really interesting about some of that stuff. But first, let's go back in time to 1990, August 17th. Barbara Walters interviews Donald Trump. Let's hear how that sounded. By the way, he just wrote a new book back then in 1990 called Surviving at the Top. And she mentions that book in this interview.
Well, the new book is entitled Surviving at the Top. There are many people who would say failing at the top.
Well, I think what the press has done is taken a situation where they see something and blown it to kingdom come. I've never seen anything like it. Whether it's a marriage, by the way, or whether it's financial, I've never seen press reporting as I have with regard to me. And I hope the general public understands how inherently dishonest the press in this country is.
As a member of the press, let me try to clear up some of the things which you say are untrue. You write in your book, "My bankers and I worked out a terrific deal that allows me to come out stronger than ever. I see the deal as a great victory, and eventually the rest of the world will too." Being on the verge of bankruptcy, being bailed out by the banks.
Well, you don't have to say on the
skating on thin ice and almost drowning, that's a businessman to be admired?
You say on the verge of bankruptcy, Barbara, and you talk on the verge, and you listen to what people are saying.
I talk to your bankers.
Well, that's fine. And what do they say? I mean, depending on which banker you're talking to, what do they say? The deal I worked out is in the process. The deal I worked out is something that I think is good for everybody. The economy is down the tubes. Nobody knows how bad the economy is. I listen to the people on Wall Street talking about the possibility of a recession. We're not in a recession. We're in a depression.
You hear him talk about the marriage. This is, he was not even yet divorced from his first wife, but they were separated. Later on in the interview, Barbara Walters talks about that he sees his kids once a week. Donald Jr. was 12 years old at the time, and he hadn't spoken to him for months. They were in a big tussle. New York City has always known Donald Trump's an idiot and a screw-up. He just squandered his dad's fortune, is basically all he ever did. Within the next 5 or 6 years from this interview, he's going to go bankrupt 4 times, I think, by 1996. We went through that in detail in a previous show, if you want to go back and find that. But, he went bankrupt a total of 6 or 7 times by now. It's little known that Donald Trump has paid the $5 million from the first E. Jean Carroll trial. He gave it up right away, gave it to the court, basically. It hasn't been paid to E. Jean Carroll yet because it's still in the appeal period of time, but Trump has not filed the paperwork for putting up an appeal. The money has to wait until this period of time lapses, and then no more appeal can be put in. And at that time, then the money would get paid to E. Jean Carroll. He gave the money over right away because there's a 10% interest rate on any of that money. So he gave it up right away back then. Many people speculate that he can't afford to do that with this $83 million. Can he get a bail bondsman to do it? Yeah. But he's going to have to talk a bail bondsman into doing it, I never pay anybody. Will you be my bail bondsman? The likelihood that I'll pay you back is very small, very small. And ironically, part of the reason that he got penalized the $83 million is because in the depositions in New York, he was bragging about how rich he is. So they said, okay, well, you should be able to afford $83.3 million. Here's a thread that I found really interesting. This guy, Brian Manukian, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He doesn't have a lot of information about who he is. He certainly sounds like a lawyer here because he is doing a lot of, lawyer speak in this thread. I have heard this from other places as well. In order to appeal, you have to have a reason to appeal. You can't just say, we appeal. You can't just say, hey, I disagree with what you did here, so do it again. You have to find a real problem going on in the trial. You have to have a reason to appeal. Alina Habba said, I'm going to appeal this right away. First of all, she shouldn't be the one appealing it, but I think she thinks that they're still going to appeal the crime and not the money. In this, it's all about the money in this. The crime has already been proven by a jury, by the way, that is chosen by her, the Trump team, and the other team. She agreed to every juror. Now she's trying to say this jury, we need a different trial with a different jury. It's just not how things work. That's what Rudy Giuliani said, too. You don't hear from him anymore because he's filing for bankruptcy. He can't afford to appeal because you need to come up with the full amount of the money and put it in a bond, where you cannot touch it. So the money needs to be sitting there while you appeal. You can't put off your punishment simply by appealing. So let me read what this guy wrote. He says, let me ruin the suspense for everyone. Trump doesn't have an appeal. I know the talking heads on TV have to mention it. Here's why it isn't going to fly. To have a meritorious appeal, you have to preserve a reversible error at the trial level. This is why you hire competent counsel. You need someone who actually knows the rules of evidence and procedure. Alina Habba had no clue what was occurring throughout the trial. She not only failed to preserve any remote grounds for appeal, like a moron, she repeatedly and unintentionally waived them over and over. For example, she kept saying no objection as exhibits were entered into evidence. It appeared to me that she was saying that because that's what she has seen lawyers say on TV or something. Unfortunately for Mr. Trump, what she was doing over and over was waiving his ability to appeal over those evidentiary issues because she's a moron who would rather play lawyer than do the research to be a lawyer. There's no appeal here, and because people have asked me in the past, no, there is no such thing as an incompetent counsel defense in civil cases. That's for criminal matters. He goes further on another point. To even have the privilege of filing an appeal, Trump would have to post a bond in excess of the full amount of the verdict. Why? Trump isn't the first deadbeat defendant. Our legal system is used to these guys. If you want to appeal, you have to put up the money in cash, not assets. If he actually does that, and he puts in parentheses, he won't, all it means is that when his appeal is summarily rejected, E. Jean gets her cash straight out of the court's escrow account instead of having to chase Trump for it. It's another reason Trump is going to make a lot of noise about appealing but not do anything substantive. His only real play here is to go to E. Jean's lawyers, try to negotiate a reduced settlement. That's what happens in 99% of these situations. The plaintiff takes 75 cents on the dollar to avoid the expense and delay of trying to collect. Defendant gets 25% discount. I doubt E. Jean accepts that here, including because most judgment interest is running at 10%. For $83 million, that is $22,739 a day in interest. You know, he's really over a barrel here. And this is why, reason 973, why Trump is already living in hell. Think about how he acts. Is he a happy guy? You ever think he just has a nice day? You ever think he enjoys a day? His cognitive decline is quite obvious at this point. Last night he did a speech in Las Vegas that was just wild. He couldn't say the word February. He messed up a whole bunch of just weird. It was just weird. The way he talks about, I'll play you this of him talking about taking the cognitive test.
I said, is it tough? He said, yeah, it's a tough test. The first couple of questions are easy, like they'll have a lion, a giraffe, a whale, and a shark. And they'll say, which one's the lion, okay? And that's all the press covered, the first question. They didn't cover the last question. Multiply 4,733. Multiply times 7. Divide, without paper and pencil, by the way. Divide it by 4. Add up another 37 and a half, 0.5. I remember that. And what's your number? How many people in this room could do it? Not too many. Or they give you 6 names in a row. I took a lot of heat on this. They give you 6 names in a row at the beginning. Sir, I'm going to give you 6 names. Good. They look at them. A chair, a hat, a badge, a necklace, and they vote. Those things. We're going to give you 6 things. And I say, good, what's going on? Can you rename them? So I name them. Then they go back, and if you can do it in order, that's even better. I do them in order? Perfect. Then they come back to you 30 minutes later at the end, last question. They say, what were those 6 things? And there aren't too many people. And they laughed. Everyone said, oh, that's so easy. There's only about 2% of this room can do it, but I did it. I did it very easily. But I got mocked. They said, oh, that's so easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. Go home and try doing it, okay?
Now, there are no sharks or whales in the cognitive test. I saw some doctor posted, it was kind of funny, but he said, hey, being somebody who has gone through this many times, I'm a doctor who gives people cognitive tests. There's no whale in the cognitive test. And the whole thing about the math problem that Trump's talking about, that's obviously a lie. That's obviously a lie. But the people in his crowd, they believe him. That's a big part of the problem. The people that follow Trump. I'm sorry, if you are a Trumper, you are an idiot. You're an absolute moron. And we're going to talk about how that is changing. We're going to talk about what's going on with the MAGA movement, what's going on with the Republican voters. After a short break, you're listening to A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson. We'll be right back. Satellite View. Don't forget, if you dig the music you're hearing on this show, you can find it, go get it for yourself on toddmickelson.com. There's a music link. Hit that, and a whole bunch of music that I have written and recorded over a many years period of time. So I told you when we come back, we're going to be talking about what's going on with the Republican voters. Now, Donald Trump has... he said, if you donate to Nikki Haley, you're permanently banned. I think he said barred. From MAGA, you can never come back. We don't want you. He was asked in New Hampshire, I think it was. So a lot of Nikki Haley supporters say that they will vote for Biden instead of you. They're going to vote for me. They're all going to vote for me, but I don't think we really need him. He's pushing people away. When you have ran before and gotten your ass handed to you twice, losing by 3 million votes the first time and losing by 7 million votes the second time, meaning you lost more voters, what you need to do, and this goes all the way down to, running for the Minnesota State House. If you're running the second time, you need to find how to gain more voters. You need to make up for that 7 million vote discrepancy. He is widening it. This is why I say I think Biden is going to win by 10 million votes if Donald Trump is the opponent on Election Day. More and more people are starting to wonder if Trump is going to end up being the Republican nominee. When talking about Trump is already living in hell, the stress will kill you. And he's getting more and more stressed. The way he acted in the courtroom on Friday, I think it was, the closing argument day, shows that he is extremely stressed out. He's very unhealthy. People have been talking about that he has lost some weight, like 10 or 15 pounds. And if that's true, it's not the healthy way. It's not the healthy way you lose weight. He has no healthy anything going on in his life. His wife's mother's funeral, Melania would not allow Trump to ride with her in her car. Do they even see each other anymore? And he, of course, all this money he's losing, we're going to find out in a couple days. Likely in a couple days, we're going to find out what Judge Engoron rules for how much he's going to be penalized in the New York fraud case. So when he puts down Nikki Haley, she raises more money. It's very clear if she would have started doing this in the very beginning, like a year ago or whenever she first got in, she would be doing very well. She would have had a great start. She's proving that you just fight back. Why is everyone so afraid to fight back against Trump? Of course, I think people in Congress, a lot of them are still being blackmailed by Trump, but he's not helping the party now. He's saying, I don't want a border bill. I want the borders to remain a catastrophe so that I can get elected. Is that going to gain votes? More and more people are hearing the news that the Biden administration and Democrats and Republicans in the Senate have written a bipartisan border bill, and Trump is telling the House to stop it. And MAGA Mike has said it's dead on arrival, even though he hasn't read it, has no idea what's in it. So what Nikki Haley is proving is if you go against Trump, people go for you. She immediately raised $1 million one night, and then after he said that thing about if you donate to Nikki Haley, you're barred. So she made T-shirts that said barred permanently. She sold 10,000 of them and raised another like $1.5 million the following day. Every time he says something about her, she raises more than $1 million in the next day. At least that's what she's saying. And her crowds sound way more enthusiastic than Trump's crowds. You could hear when I played that cognitive segment, his crowds are just kind of going, what? What's he talking about? Nikki Haley's crowds are being, very cheery and large. So he's losing voters. He's losing Republican voters. I hope that Trump is the Republican nominee. I just have had a feeling for about a year that he's not going to make it. He's not going to end up being the nominee. He's running out of gas. He's either about to fall asleep while he's reading the teleprompter, or he's super hopped up and doing this sniffle thing. We're going to talk about a story that came up about the White House and drugs under the Trump administration. I hope to get to that here too. But a big reason why I hope Trump is the nominee is because Nikki Haley, Biden, I think he'll only beat her by 8 million votes. But it makes me nervous. The reason that the Democrats are totally going to win, and by the way, I bumped into a person I work with in politics who works very diligently here in the district and is a person who, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but not as hopeful as you hear me being on this show. I'm always the optimist, and she's always like, I don't know, we got to really work hard. And I'm like, no, we got to work hard, but we're going to win. And she's like, I don't know. I saw her at the grocery store, and I said, I think Biden's going to win Ohio. And she said, I think so too. So we both agreed that it's because of women's reproductive health care rights. And that's why Nikki Haley cannot beat Joe Biden either, or anybody, because Nikki Haley, if Congress tries to do a national ban, she'll go for it. Period. The Republican side, you lose the Republicans if you say, I want to protect women's health care rights. And you lose the vast majority of the country if you say you want to put a ban on women's reproductive rights. They're the dog that caught the car on that issue. And it's all done. That is what's going to extinct the party. And of course, Donald Trump was a big part of getting them there. So the insurance is just that one issue. Of course, we have a lot of other issues. The economy's doing really, really well. When everybody said we were going to be in a recession by now, Trump said we were going to be in a 1929 like depression, like Herbert Hoover. It's going the opposite direction. So he doesn't want to talk about the economy. He wants to just keep the border a problem so that he can talk about that. The Nikki Haley supporters will vote for Nikki Haley. But if Donald Trump is the nominee, those Nikki Haley supporters will vote for Joe Biden. Here is a New Hampshire voter.
I voted for Nikki Haley because I was voting against Donald Trump.
And what propelled you to get to this point?
I'm 74 years old. I've lived in a constitutional democracy all my life. I want to remain that way, and I want my grandchildren to grow up in one, not a dictatorship.
And I'm curious, over the last two elections, have you voted Trump in the past? Was it something where you voted for him, you trusted him, and you were disappointed?
Yes, I voted for him in 2016. I am a registered Republican, and I regretted that vote almost immediately, especially on his trip to Europe where he insulted our allies and praised Putin.
And then in 2020, was that enough for you to change your vote to Joe Biden?
Yes, absolutely.
Why did you feel the need to cross party lines?
Because I want the world to be a safe place. I believe in a strong NATO. My father fought in World War II to defeat fascism, and I want it to remain defeated.
That is a Nikki Haley supporter. If Nikki Haley is the nominee, this woman will vote for Nikki Haley. If Donald Trump is the nominee, this woman will vote for Joe Biden. By the way, what a well-spoken 74-year-old woman. She didn't hesitate or pause or stop to think or say, or, very well-spoken. Because she's smart. That's why she stopped voting for Trump. I'm surprised she did vote for Trump, but she's a Republican, a Northeast Republican. Seems like there's a lot of reasonable people who are Northeasterners and Republicans, like from the old days, kind of. But anyway, in New Hampshire, 70% of Nikki Haley supporters said that they will vote for Joe Biden. This is exit polls. These are Republicans going to the caucuses and primaries. The most active Republicans. So Trump is going to absolutely get decimated in the election if he ends up being the nominee. Everybody is sure he's going to be the nominee. I just don't know if he's going to make it through the year. Seriously, I think, one of these times they're pumping him up with Adderall before he goes on stage. His small little black hateful heart is just going to explode. How much more of this can he take? It's absolutely crazy. By the way, too, when I played that clip of him, the makeup that he puts on is getting more and more weird. His hair and his makeup, the way he looks, he's super sweaty all the time. He's not doing well. I hope that he is the nominee all the way through Election Day, because he's going to get decimated. Nikki Haley, she's probably got people working for her that are saying, let's just stay in because, I don't think Trump is going to make it. And if Trump just falls over dead one day, then you're the nominee. So don't suspend your campaign. You got tons of money. Just hang in there. Speaking of Adderall, reading from the Rolling Stone, White House pharmacists reportedly distributed uppers and downers like candy to Trump administration officials during his time in office. This is according to a new report from the Department of Defense Inspector General. The 80-page document, which was released on January 8th, found that all phases of the White House medical unit's pharmacy operations had severe and systematic problems due to the unit's reliance on ineffective internal controls to ensure compliance with pharmacy safety standards. The investigation, which began in 2018 after the Office Inspector General received complaints about improper medical practices in the White House. It was actually a study from the period of 2009 to 2018. But of course, the majority of its findings coalesce around 2017 through 2019, of course. Really startling. Ambien and another drug. Ambien is a sedative used to treat insomnia. The other one is a stimulant used to treat narcolepsy, where you can't stay awake. Uppers and downers and uppers and downers and uppers and downers. And they've been giving it out to people. They pack them in bags when staffers go on trips. There's only supposed to be, certain people are eligible to get these things from the White House pharmacy, but they were just giving them out. Some over-the-counter drugs, they were just leaving them out. You could go grab them. They were also wasting tons of money. They spent on a brand name Ambien. They spent $46,500, which is 174 times more expensive than the generic equivalent. $98,000 for brand name of the other drug that I don't know how to pronounce, which is 55 times more expensive than the generic equivalent. So, Trump never cared about saving money. And also, I forgot another thing about why Trump is already living in hell. I saw Trump already posted a Breitbart article that talks disparagingly about E. Jean Carroll. So he might have already violated the orders of a federal judge. He can't keep defaming her. Everyone said, you got to punish him with enough money to make him stop. And it's looking like he already might be not stopping. E. Jean Carroll can impose a permanent injunction if Trump violates the orders of a federal judge, in which case the federal judge can further penalize him. He might penalize him with money. He might penalize him with something more. He also might detain him. U.S. Marshals would go to Mar-a-Lago, arrest Trump, and put him in a detention center. And I can tell you right now, Alina Habba has no idea how to get him out of that detention center. I don't know either, but I'm not a lawyer. But it sounds very complicated. I heard somebody talking about it, and I was like, what? That sounds really almost impossible. They talked about writ of habeas corpus to get around a federal judge. That doesn't sound like something that's going to happen. It does sound like this judge, though, would throw him in detention if he keeps doing this. So that is something that can happen. And also, a report came in from retired federal judge Barbara Jones, who is the independent financial monitor of the Trump organization. Her report just came out, and it talks about phantom loans. There was a $48 million loan that Trump got from his own corporation, and then they said, no, that never happened. A lot of stuff just in handwriting, bad math, documents not turned in on time or at all. It just sounds like nobody in the Trump family or organization knows how to run an organization. They don't know how to run a company. Trump is supposed to be a businessman. It doesn't sound like he is. He's just a goof off. He's just a F up. The report's coming in here right in the final moments of Judge Engoron trying to figure out how much he's going to penalize the Trump organization. Trump is pretty doomed. And yes, if he can't come up with $83 million, this Barbara Jones independent financial monitor will be in charge of selling his assets. He will not be. Actually, I think maybe even the government will, because it would become government property. So he would have to turn his assets over to the government. The government would sell it off. And they're not going to ask for billions and billions for Doral. $1.5 billion for Mar-a-Lago. Is Mar-a-Lago going to go up for sale sometime this year? Possible. Probable? Maybe. It's going to be a really fun year. Like I said last show, I got my oil barrel size barrel of popcorn ready to go for 2024. I've already used up some of the popcorn. So, yeah, just, everybody always says buckle up or strap in. You just sit on your couch and watch. Relax. It's going to be fun to watch Trump become doomed in one way and or another. So, yeah, fun times ahead. We've gone over time. You're listening to A Satellite View. Thank you for listening to A Satellite View. And we'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.